As a quick review, I have a one-dimensional array setup of ID numbers. And maybe this is for a school who's tracking student ID numbers. And we have the array called ID numbers, and then here's a set of ID numbers listed. For example, maybe they track students by graduation year, 2016, and then they give the student an ID number. So I have here 2 graduates of 2016 and 1 graduate of 2017. And the student here has an ID number of 111 in that graduating year. Remember, to cycle through the ID number array, what we can do is use a for loop, and we start with I0 because we want the 0 index number printed here. ID numbers index 0, so that will print me the first student here. And it will cycle through, and it will go less than the length of the array. The array is 3. So it's going to stop at index 2, which is perfect because I have index 0, index 1, index 2. I want it to stop. And so that's a review of one-dimensional arrays. But let's say we now want to expand that to 2D, two-dimensional arrays. I would need to add another set of brackets, which is signifying a 2D array. Then maybe my first row in my 2D array is referring to just 2016 graduates. So I'm going to add one more 2016 graduate here. Student ID number 122. And if you recall, then we could go with organizing our data in this manner, if you'd like, just so it's more of a visible, I guess, representation of a table, because that's really what 2D arrays are, just a representation of table. And let's see, 2017 183. We need to close it with a bracket there. And then take a look at any errors we might have. Now each row needs to be separated by a comma, and so that should take care of the issues that I see on my screen right here. And so if you remember now, with the 2D array, I need row by column. And so when I do this, I'm listing each row inside a set of brackets. That's my first row with 3 columns. And then my next set of brackets here is my next row with 3 columns. Now if I go to print out, and I've just run my code as it is and do this for loop and run it and take a look at what I'm getting, I get a bunch of really kind of weird results there. And it's because what it's doing is, remember, this ID numbers I is not a 2D array, it's a 1D. So I'm actually asking it to print a one-dimensional array, but I really am trying to read a two-dimensional array, and that is where the problem lies. So the trick here is to remember that when we do two-dimensional arrays, this ID number's length is actually counting how many rows there are. And so there are 2 rows in this array, row 1, row 2, and so it's going to run less than 2, which is 1. So it's only going to print 0 and 1. And in my output, that's why I see 2 lines of output, even though they don't make a lot of sense to us right now. And so what I need to do is, I am running through each row, but I have to run through each column at the same time. So I actually need another counter with a different variable, because the I is already here. And so I will use j, and this time I want j to be less than ID numbers, but I want it to look at the rows dot length. I want to know how long each row is, how many elements are in each row. Okay, j++. And when I do that, I would like to output the statement. And that would be kind of the way I would like to look at it. But I have to remember here to signify which row I'm in by putting an I there. The I is going to keep track of which row we're in, because remember, this for loop right here counts the rows. So I'm on row 0, and then this for loop is going to count the columns. So it's going to say for row 0, let's do column 0, column 1, and then when we're done, then go back through and start this for loop again, and go with row index 1. So when I run this, it will print out my table once everything is corrected. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things that are outputted here, which is great, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items in our array. However, obviously they're not printing the numbers that we really intended to print, and so we need to deal with what that issue might be. So we go back through and we look at our for loops, and we want the for loop to count the rows, and that's this one here. We want to count what rows we're on, alright, and that shouldn't be an issue. Then we want to count what column we're in. Right here, we'd like to count which column we're in. And that all doesn't seem to be an issue. But the issue lies right here where I print my array. I didn't make a correction that I'm printing a one-dimensional array when I'm actually reading a two-dimensional array. So I need to make sure that I not only print the row, but I also print the column. Remember, i's are the row, j is the column. And therefore, now when I print this out, I run it, and I'm actually getting my 6 ID numbers. That's great. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Now, if I want them all listed as they are, 6 in a row, line by line, that's great. But if I'd like to see them in table form, for whatever reason, then I would need to come back to my code here and try to figure out a way to do that. Well, I wouldn't want to hit enter after every ID number, so I would take the ln off. Now that's going to create another little problem because we're going to be printing a huge one line of characters. Okay, but what I really would want to do is, I'd really want to print an enter when a row is done. And so here, what I would want to do is I'd want to add a bracket in here, because the second that one of the rows is done, I would output just a blank print statement. And try it this way, and this is, now I have my 2 rows, because it's going to hit enter at the end of the first row and enter at the end of the second row. Of course, I would like to separate my ID numbers a little bit. So inside my printing an ID number, I will add maybe a space or 2. And now I have my nice 2 by 3. This is what the array kind of looks like in our minds in memory because it's a 2 by 3 array. So there you have it. There's a 2-dimensional array, pretty basic array, tracking student ID numbers, and being able to print it into a little table and keeping track of the dimensions at the same time.